Okay, so here we are ready to fit the cylinder block onto the pistons. Hang on a minute, haven't we already done that? Yes, this is fitting the cylinder block onto the pistons Mark II, Part 2. Basically, I fitted the cylinder block before onto the pistons, and then I thought I would insert the center piston down from the middle, so I was only fitting 2 pistons at once and fit the 3rd piston at the end. What I didn't realize was, until someone wrote in, was that you cannot fit the piston from the top because the big end's too wide to go down the bore. So what you have to do is fit the center piston first in the bore, which I've now done. Put some clamps on it, fit it from down below, fine, so it's sitting there ready, and then I'm going to lower it down, and so the center piston will already be in, and then I will be able to do the big end up from underneath, but you need to fit that center piston and conrod first. Number 1. Number 2, it was also pointed out to me by Ian, crikey, sorry Ian, forgot your name. That it'll come to me. What I did before, I actually had the crankshaft in the wrong position, which made the job twice as hard, and I actually had the pistons at the bottom, which is why I was thinking, crikey, how did I ever do this with trying to fit 3 at once? It's because I actually had the pistons in the wrong position. So I've now turned the crankshaft so the pistons are now at the top rather than the bottom, which means that they're now fully out of the crankcase, which they certainly weren't before. And so I've been able to fit these strips of wood underneath, which are holding the pistons nice and tight, so that when I put the quite heavy barrels on, the crankshaft won't turn. I've also got my adjustable on to stop the crankshaft turning as well. But then we'll slip the wood out and we should be okay. So it's a question of doing the job all over again. But all is not lost, because for those of you who have read my wonderful manual, I meant to get it out now and I've forgotten to. Never mind, I shall insert a photo of it about here. Right, so anyone who has read the manual will know that in the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert M. Persig, he says that don't worry, you're always doing things like this where you do a job and you get it wrong, you have to take it all apart again, and it's a nightmare. But the only advantage is that A, you do it twice as fast the second time, and B, you learn a lot more, about doing the job and so on. So always look at it as a job, like a silver lining almost. It's almost a blessing in disguise. You've got to take it all apart and do it, because you've done something wrong, have to do it all again. Don't look at it totally negatively. There's a plus side to it. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Now, before I actually put the barrels back on, I'm going to do a final talk about piston rings and so on. First of all, let me make it very clear that these are my opinions, what I've learned over the years and years and years, and talking to other people and other experts and so on. This is how my view and take on pistons and how to fit them and how to stop them smoking piston rings and so on. But you have to be aware that's my opinion. And there are hundreds of different opinions out there, as you'll find if you probably go on to any other bits of YouTube or whatever. So I would suggest, you don't just take my word for it. Go and listen to other people, see what their opinions are. But, then sort of weigh up, who you think you trust most, and, perhaps take bits of what I'm saying and what other people are saying, whatever. But this is my final take on piston rings. So this is an old British bike. So it uses quite old technology. The actual liners, the barrel liners, are called austenitic steel. I think it is austenitic steel, which is slightly makes them slightly stainless steel. But the main, so they're not that magnetic. But the main thing about austenitic steel is that it doesn't harden with heat, which is why they add the make it austenitic. So obviously the barrels, otherwise they'd be cracking or whatever, I think, with the heat. So they're austenitic steel, but they're also means they are steel. They're pretty rugged, rough items. So what you want, in order for the rings and that to bed in, you want some big rings. In this case, we use the Omega rings, the one I have been using, and they are cast iron piston rings. So they're pretty meaty, big, fuck off rings, you know. Hey, I'm a cast iron ring, fuck off out of the way, if you excuse the expression. So the rings are strong enough to wear on the liners and smooth them out, okay, without doing damage really to the rings. Now, when you buy pistons, what we normally do is, as in this case, we throw the original rings away and we fit the cast iron Omega rings. Because, you know, for that reason that they're strong enough, they're meaty enough to take on the cylinder bores and smooth them out. Now, on later engines, more modern engines, they use things, I think they call it like plateau honing, and they use Nickel liners on the bores and things. So the whole thing's a lot smoother, and so you can use smoother rings that aren't big fuck off cast iron ones, and the whole thing will be great. It doesn't need running in or whatever normally, and that's fine. But be aware that that's why there's a difference, because the modern engines have different liners and so on. We're dealing with the 1970s technology, and so over the years, I and others have found that the best thing to do is you buy your new pistons, you throw the piston rings away, you buy Omega rings, you have about a 180, a good sort of hone and bore. Of course, we can't catch the light now on this. So you get a good bore, and that is what works best. And you run the rings dry so that they cut into the bores and stop the oil getting past the rings. If you use, if you put them in with a lot of oil or like a very good oil, the oil will simply mean that the rings will help the rings slide over the bores and they won't cut in at all. You want the rings to cut in. Okay, I think that's about what I wanted to say about it. But you know, that's the sort of reasoning and that behind it. But you know, you listen to other people's opinions. I mean, some people say, you know, put a bit of oil on the piston skirts. I'm not, for a simple reason. I honestly don't think it needs it, because there's no direct contact between the pistons and the cylinders. It's, you know, there's a sort of 4 or 5 thou gap, and also within 10 seconds, probably less than that, of the engine starting to splash from the crank case and the crankshaft going around, we'll get these wet straight away. But in that first 10 seconds, I would like the bores actually to be dry, so that they actually do cut in a bit, the rings, without the oil on them. And that's why I'll also recommend using running in oil, again, to help those rings cut into the bores, rather than ordinary oil or worse still, some sort of high sort of synthetic oil, which has got amazing sort of slippage properties. Okay, yeah, I think that's about all I need to say on it. So yeah, just be aware. You know, any advice you get on the internet, mine included, you know, take it with a pinch of salt. Think about it, weigh it up, listen to other ideas and opinions, and then, you know, take it from there. The other thing to be aware of is there are some things that are factual, you know, like what size thread is on the barrel, on the crankcases or whatever, and there's only right or wrong answer to that, really. And then there's your opinion ones about which is the best way to fit the rings and to stop it smoking and so on. So, you know, just be aware again. That's a factual answer is pretty straightforward. Opinion a bit more difficult. Right, okay, I'm going to put the camera on the tripod. I'm going to try fitting these again, this time with the, oh yes, so one other thing I was going to say. I've realised, if you were watching me dismantling this engine, I discovered that this centre conrod, the big end had been fitted around the wrong way. Now there are punch marks, hopefully you can see, yeah, and those punch marks obviously they go, they align up with each other, they go on the same side. Okay, punch mark to punch mark. When I took this apart, this has been fitted around the wrong way. Now I'm now thinking, this is my guess, that whoever built the engine before is they used this method of fitting the pistons by fitting the centre one first. But of course, once they put the conrod in, you can't see which side is centre punched. Okay, yeah, okay. And I think, so then they have to like guess which way round to put the cap, and they guess wrong. Okay, so just be aware of that. If you are using this method, make a note of which side the punch is on, which on my side is on the front or the exhaust side. And also obviously make sure when you do this that when you put the piston, you also put that around the right way, because you can't change it when it's in. Again, like with the larger cutout to the rear for the inlet valves. But I think that's what happened. I'm guessing that he put it in and then thought, hang on, which side was it? Because you can't see, because it's all, you know, down inside the engine now. And so he guessed and guessed wrong. All right, so do check that. If you're going to use this method, make a note of which way the centre punch is, so that when you put that cap on, you put it on with the two centre punches around the right way. Oops. Where's it gone? There it is. Yeah. Okay, Coke. There. Right. Okay, you're going to fit in the barrels. Take 2 coming up. Okay, ready to put the barrels on. Take 2. So I've got the barrels, I've got the well seal on. Yeah, I'm going to pick up the barrels. I'm probably going to put some gloves on, because I can feel I'm going to get a bit of well seal all over me, which is a nightmare to get off. I actually got myself some proper latex gloves. I bought the wrong lot of gloves before. What were they? Oh, they were vinyl gloves. Horrible things. These are latex. So much better, but I bought them. I had to use them, you know, I didn't feel like I could throw them away. They were horrible things. Anyway, I'm back on latex gloves, so much better. Right. Make sure I've got it, the barrels around the right way. Yeah, that says front. Check that the piston isn't going to fall out by itself. No, that's good. Okay. Get the barrels around. Try and keep my hands off the well seal. Introduce the barrels to the top of the pistons. Check that the big end on the middle one is actually over the right part of the crankshaft. Is that going on? Yes, it is. Gently tapping them down. Oops. There we go. You can feel that it's going over the rings now. Make sure that that centre conrod is definitely sitting, you know, the legs, the conrod bolts are either side of the actual journal. What are we doing? Going to go down a bit more, might as well, just to double check I've got the board, that the barrels are definitely over the rings. Yes, they are. Down. I can see the barrels are down over the, well over the gudgeon pin now. So I fitted the ring clamps so that I can get to them quite easily with a screwdriver. Right, the clamps, got the clamps off. So I'm just going to put the barrels down a bit more. Okay. Just going to turn the crankshaft enough, then to get the last couple of strips of wood out. Okay, good. They're good because they hold the pistons, like now, they're starting to wobble around a bit, which is okay because we're sort of half down, but not good when you're first trying to get the barrels on. There we go. Make sure the liners go down inside the crankcase. And they always seem to want to hit the top of the crankcase. It'll take the time. Okay, camera went off then. I don't know why, but anyway, a couple of things while I remember. I have put the tappets. I put the tappets back in the positions that they came out of, and again they're tied up with some cable ties so that when you turn the barrels the right way up, they don't slide out. There. So having now introduced the cylinder base nuts over the top of the studs, I can knock the barrels down a bit more. You can't put them down, but you can't do that straight away because there's not enough room. You can't get the nuts on over the top of the studs. There's not enough room between the top of the stud and the bottom fin of the barrel if you put them down straight away. Okay, so now I'm just going to do them up by hand and then finish them off with the spanner. One thing is, of course, because I have done all the threads on the studs, then I know that all the nuts are doing that really nice and easy. Okay, so it's always worth putting a tap down, putting a die over the threads, running the die down, get them all nice and clean so all the nuts go on really nicely. Okay, so I'm just going to carry on doing that by hand until they're all down, and then we're going to use the spanner to tighten them up. Okay, so now that these nuts have been tightened down by hand, the barrels are basically down on the crankcases, then I'm going to use the tricore spanner, multi-point spanner, to go over the multi-point nuts. Okay, now I'm actually going to start these. I'm trying to know what I'm doing. I'll start from the middle and work out. And again, just what I'm going to do is just give them, tighten them up in stages. Obviously don't tighten them all up at once. Okay, and then I'll do the other side. There's 10 altogether, and I'm going to slowly do them up. Now, I might be wrong. I think there's a torque setting for these, but I don't know anyone who actually uses a torque setting, and to be honest, I've no idea how you would actually get the torque setting on these. Anyway, so basically I just do them up pretty tight. I'll see if I can remember what the torque setting is, and I'll let you know. but generally just do them up pretty tight. Okay, I'm just going to go around and tighten these up in stages until they're tight all the way around, starting at the middle, working out, and keep going back. No matter that much, but obviously it's just good practice. Always start in the middle and work out. Okay. Right, there we are. They're all tightened up now. The actual torque setting is 22 foot-pounds, which is fairly pretty tight. So basically, I just use this spanner and do them up about as tight as I can get them with that spanner. I've never had any problems like that, but of course they do want to be tight. That's another good reason for cleaning the threads, to make sure you are actually tightening the nut up and the nut isn't just galling like on the thread. Because of course every time the piston fires, then it's actually trying to lift the barrels. In effect, it's trying to lift the barrels off the crankcase. So you need them nice and tight. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn the engine over, get access through the bottom, through the sump, to fit the big end cap on the center piston, all being well. Hopefully it's sitting there in the right place, waiting to be done up.